Alrighty, class. So we've been talking about living things and organisms and cells. And so we're just going to be talking today about how cells are organized. All right. So, how it is organized. We'll talk about cells, tissues, organs, and organ systems. So we're going to talk about cells, tissues, organs, and organ systems. So cells basically are the basic functional unit of all living things, the teeny weeniest. All right. So they're the basic building blocks of life. And an example would be the blood cell. So cells. Basic functional unit of all living things. Cells again, or I'm going to put this in a box. Cells again are the basic building blocks of life. An example would be, I have an example right here, would be a blood cell. Go ahead and draw an arrow. When I have several cells come together, all right, several cells together make a tissue. I'm going to write that here. I think my arrow is too long. All right. Good. Uh-oh. There we go. All right, so several cells together make tissues. So basically, what are tissues? Tissues are basically like groups of similar cells that all do the same work. Group of similar cells. That all do the same work. Right? Now, when you have like several tissues together, lots of tissues make an organ. I'm going to go ahead and do that in blue. I have my, change that color right there to blue. My organ. So what is an organ? All right, so it's a structure made up of two or more different types of tissues that work together to do a certain work. So it's a structure that is made up of two or more different types of tissues that work together. So these work together to do a certain job. All right, an example of an organ would be the heart is an organ. Another example would be the lungs. Now, when we have several organs, different types of organs that work together, they make up the organ system. I can make that in maybe purple. Hold on. Blue and then purple. So then we have the organ system. Box that up right there. All right, so an organ system, this is a group. Oh, excuse me. Right. So that's a group of organs that work together to perform a certain task. So an example for this would be the digestive system. All right, so basically, like the way this is organized, you got one cell, several of those cells come together, similar cells come together, and they make a tissue. They all do the same work. Now, when you have several different types of tissues that work together to do a certain job, they form an organ. And then an organ system would be a group of organs that work together and they perform a certain task. All right. So that's basically how this is organized. And then we're going to go ahead and watch a short video to help us better understand, just to recap all that we have been learning. I'm going to go ahead and present my screen. And I'll mute myself so the video works better.
When cells work together in multi-celled creatures, they always form into organized groups in order to do their jobs in the best possible way. We can observe one of the ways that cells are organized by thinly slicing an onion, putting the slice on a glass slide, and adding a few drops of dye. Then, if we view the stained slice under a microscope, we will see that the cells aren't just scattered loosely about, but that groups of similar cells are neatly arranged side by side into separate layers called tissues. And forming tissues is the very simplest way that cells arrange themselves when they work together in multi-celled organisms. In the much more complicated structures called organs, several different kinds of tissue layers join together to do a certain job. We can look at how different tissues are arranged in a plant organ, the stem, by cutting a very thin slice. putting the slice on a glass slide and adding a drop of dye. Looking at the slice through a microscope, we can see that in the stem, different tissue layers are arranged alongside of one another in a certain order. And that's what makes this organ work. Besides their stems, the organs of plants also include their flowers, leaves, and roots. Each of these organs does an important job that supports the life of the plant. The stems carry water to the leaves. The leaves collect energy from the sun. The roots draw in water and nutrients from the soil. And the flowers form seeds and pollen that will make new plants. Animals have organs that are made from different kinds of tissues too. But animal and plant organs don't look very similar. That is because, as we will soon discover, plant and animal cells aren't exactly the same, and animal organs have to carry out quite different tasks from those of plants. The stomach, for example, is an animal organ that is made up of about 4 different tissue layers. The job of the stomach is to help digest food, while the heart is an organ for pumping blood that is made from several thick tissue layers of muscle cells. And the brain is an organ for processing information. The average human brain is made up of several tissue layers containing about 10 billion delicate nerve cells. The most complicated way that groups of cells work together is when 2 or more organs combine forces to do a certain job. These highly organized arrangements of cells that have already formed into tissues and organs are called organ systems. The human body actually has 10 different organ systems, but we'll look at just 2 of them now. In our first example, the stomach and the long twisted tubes of the intestines, along with a few other organs, join forces to form the digestive system. The purpose of this organ system is to break down food into useful nutrients and to eliminate waste materials from the body. A second organ system, known as the respiratory system, is made up of the lungs and breathing tubes. The purpose of this organ system is to deliver oxygen to the bloodstream and to help rid the body of waste carbon dioxide.
All right, so just to recap what we've learned today, with unicellular organisms, they can perform all of life functions just using that one cell. However, with multicellular organisms like animals and plants, they use specialized cells. All right, they need several cells to perform life's functions. So, for instance, the digestive system just works in breaking down nutrients so that we can get energy for our body. And then the respiratory system works with air. All right. And so just basically understanding how cells, tissues, organs, and organ systems are formed helps us better understand how multicellular organisms work and how they are organized. And that concludes our lesson for today.